All right. So Joe Biden now has the lowest approval ratings at this point in his presidency of any president other than Trump. His approval rating just hit a new low. He's down 13% since August. He's a 43%, which strangely enough puts Kamala Harris above him at 49% approval rating. Independents have dropped from 55% approval in June to 37%. And Congress is still doing stellar, by the way, with a 27% approval rating. So what's the deal? What is as our friend Jerry Seinfeld used to say, what is the deal with Joe Biden's approval rating numbers?
I think it's two things. So, first of all,
friend of the show, Jerry Seinfeld.
Right. Friend of the show, Jerry Seinfeld, to quote our pal. I think it's two things. I think it is the Afghanistan pullout, number one. And I think it's the fact that COVID is back, number two. So I'll take these one at a time. The Afghanistan pullout was the kind of thing that a politician like Joe Biden looked especially bad. See, the worst thing that can happen to a president, a governor, a senator, a candidate for office is for something to happen that confirms a sort of suspicion that people already had about you, or it confirms an attitude that people already had about you. So the sort of classic example of this would be like the Mitt Romney 47% tape, where he was, caught on video basically saying that the 47% of Americans who are too poor to pay income taxes are moochers, they're lazy, they're never going to get their lives in order, and so we should just give up on them. Because that confirms what everybody thought about Mitt Romney, which is that he was a rich prick with no understanding for the sort of struggles of the ordinary person. The Hillary Clinton line about the basket of deplorables, the Trump grab him by the pussy tape, right? These all confirm sort of negative biases that people already have about these candidates or these leaders, right? And so when the Afghanistan pullout goes the way it does, and then you see a tape from 6 weeks ago of Joe Biden at a press conference looking like he's 1 foot in the grave, just bumbling through, oh, yeah, no, we think, no, we don't think the Taliban's going to take over. No, that's not inevitable. No, we got 375,000 people trained, and, I think it'll be all right. Just looking like half fucking dead.
Mm-hmm.
And then you see that everything he said was wrong. And then he does the press conference with his head in the podium, and then that picture of him walking away with his eyes closed and his head down. That's a 47% moment because people, even a lot of people who voted for you, had doubts about whether you could do the job, right? And so when a thing like that happens, that is, basically as incompetent a job as you could do. I mean, that would not have gone worse if Trump were president. You know what I mean? That was not the adults in charge, right?
No.
And so that is the kind of thing that is going to cause your poll numbers to plummet because people were already nervous that you weren't up to this. And then they see a disaster like that happen, and you're on tape just sort of mumbling through your diagnosis of the situation as much better than it ultimately was. You look like they thought you would maybe look, like an old man who's not up for the job. And so that's the first thing. And then the COVID thing is just very simple. I think a lot of people voted for Joe Biden because they thought that he would help the country get through this pandemic faster than Trump. And for a while, it looked like he was doing that, and now it doesn't. And so now they're like, oh, well,
this
that's going to hell.
This is the irony. This is a whole beloved genre of science fiction. The Man in the High Castle was an example. Alternative history science fiction. What if the South won the Civil War? That kind of thing. It's interesting to ask the question. So, okay. Because, for example, Joy Reid got into a little kerfuffle with Nicki Minaj about Nicki Minaj saying she didn't say she wouldn't take the vaccine, but she's doing her research and She said something about a cousin of a friend having swollen testicles, but that's beside the point. Joy Reid, back when this vaccine was being developed under Donald Trump, said you'd have to be out of your mind to take a vaccine now that was approved by the FDA. She tweeted that out to her followers, right? So, in an alternate universe where Trump won this election, would the Democrats have been the vaccine resistant ones and the Republicans would have been lining up to take it? Like what? But overall, my take is that ironically, in terms of overall numbers, if Trump had stayed president, because his people would be more likely to reject the vaccine by disposition, probably we wouldn't have had a hard time vaccinating people.
No, you would have had more people vaccinated if Trump had won, because just as you said, there are more Trumpers who are going to be hesitant to take the vaccine, who might be convinced by Trump if he said, look, I made this, it's safe, this is the Keep America Great vaccine, take it. They might be moved by that. Whereas there is a contingent of liberals who would not take the vaccine if it were Trump, if it were a Trump vaccine, but it's smaller. So I think once you run all the numbers,
because in the end, it comes out of Pfizer, it comes out of Moderna. They have their respect for experts and
right. I mean, at the end of the day, they're not predisposed to be anti-vaxxers, whereas a lot of the Trump people are. Right. Now, you also have some of people in Trump's base booing him at a rally in Alabama when he told them to get tested. So there are just a lot of right-wingers who are just anti-vax and are not going to get it no matter what. And there are a certain number of left-wingers who are anti-vax and not going to get it no matter what. But I think you're right. If you ran the numbers through, you'd have more people vaccinated had Trump won. Given that the announcement came after the 2020 vote. Now, if the numbers had come in October, like if, well, not numbers, but if Pfizer had come out and said, hey, the vaccine's ready on October 27th, then a lot of liberals would be a lot more scared, because that would come off as an October surprise that was just like meant to throw the election to Trump. They'll think like this is fucking Mountain Dew that he's shot in his arm so that he'd win. But given when the announcement happened, yes, I do think there'd be more people vaccinated if he had won. And I think that,
and also for better or for worse, and different people can have different opinions about this, but I think life would have been more back to normal by now, because they just wouldn't have done mask mandates at this point. It just would have been like, we have a vaccine, we're done, that's it.
Yeah, I mean,
take the freaking vaccine.
That may be true, but then numbers might be even higher. You know, I mean, look, look, bottom line is the thing is still here. And I think a lot of why Biden won, in fact, I mean, the main reason Biden won, I would argue the only reason he actually won is because enough people thought, well, as long as Trump's in office, COVID is always going to be with us. And now, you know, almost a year into Biden's first term, COVID is not only still with us, it's coming back. And now the death count in 2021 far surpasses the death count in 2020. Granted, a lot of that was in January, because January was a horribly deadly month. But still, we have not seen, if you look overall, Joe Biden crush COVID. We just haven't seen that. And that's a big part of why he won, was because people thought maybe not he would wipe it out, but people thought they were in much better hands with this virus under Biden than they would be under Trump. And look, I felt that way too. I don't blame people for feeling that way. And I still do feel that way. Like, I think there would be higher numbers and higher death counts had Trump won. You know, but the bottom line is Biden got a lot of votes that he would not have gotten were it not for COVID. That senior swing,
of course,
that senior swing where, you know, Trump was winning seniors by 9 points in 2016, and then, you know, he lost them. Now, that was all COVID. Bunch of 75-year-old white guys did not all of a sudden become Kamala Harris loving liberals. Right? I mean, that was all. They were afraid that Trump was going to get them killed. And now that the numbers are back up, they're starting to think, well, what the fuck we vote for this asshole for? What's the difference?
Well,
And now you're seeing his numbers go down.
not only that, it's interesting how they're just constantly slapping a band-aid on a gaping wound and trying to clean up the festering pus later. This was Mr. Dogface Pony Soldier who lost the first three primaries. There was a reason for that. There was a reason that he was losing the primaries badly, because he's past his prime. He's a doddering old guy. He was never all that popular in the first place, except as an Onion character interpretation of himself. Like he, as himself, was never a popular guy. Nobody really wanted him, not even Democrats. Nobody was excited about him. So if that's where you're starting, it doesn't take much to tank your approval ratings, because nobody really wanted you in the first place.
Well,
even the
also,
Democrats didn't really want you.
Right. And also, if you look at the timeline, as soon as he took office, they got the checks out the door. They passed the American Rescue Plan. And then in the early summer, COVID numbers tanked. And we thought, wait, hey, maybe we're past this. Yeah. July 4th, he declared independence from COVID. That was a very mission accomplished type moment.
It was a very foolish thing to do.
You come out and you say, it's over, we're done. And then it comes back. And so, he had what every president has, which is a brief honeymoon period. And then you had a series of very positive news cycles. Everybody's getting checks in their account. There's passing a rescue plan. They're passing this big bill. COVID numbers go down. Right? I mean, those are all extremely positive headlines right out of the gate. And now, a few months later, things ain't looking so good. And so his approval rating is down. It makes perfect sense. There's no mystery.
Sure. And you were mentioning this. I can't remember if you mentioned it. Well, it must have been offline. You were talking about inflation. It's an interesting question, because Jay Powell at the Fed just made the stock market go through the roof over the last 2 days after tanking for like 2 weeks, because he indicated, employment's still not great. I don't think we're going to raise, or he said, we're not going to raise rates until the employment situation is better. So look, I mean, basically Powell's take is wages increasing are good for workers. And we're going to leave rates low because we want the economy to be running at that kind of a pace where it's going to drive up wages, and there's going to be, demand for labor. But at the same time, I can see when I go by, like, I usually get my food from Blue Apron, so I'm a little insulated from prices in the supermarket. But the week of the Ida aftermath in the Northeast, they couldn't deliver it. So I went to the supermarket. Thing like is off the hook, man.
Oh, it's crazy. So, you cut out for a second there, but it's okay. I get what you said. No, I know a loaf of whole wheat bread used to be $2.49. I go back, it's $2.99. Now, first of all, the employee who had to re-sticker all those loaves of bread because they got the big orange stickers on it, like 200 loaves of bread that he had.
But that proves Powell's point, because they're getting $28 an hour to do that now.
Right. Yeah.